Then it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
Today we know how important writing is to our society. Without writing, you couldn't text or chat or even communicate effectively with words. The development of writing was an important advancement in human civilization. When we talk about early writing, we talk about Mesopotamia, which is located in modern-day Iraq, but also parts in Syria, Iran, and Turkey. If you look at this map, we have four main cradles of civilization: the Nile, the Mesopotamian with the Tigris and Euphrates River, the Indus, and the Huanghe Valley. What they all have in common is that they're close to rivers and fertile land, which helped early societies develop and grow. The main cities of Mesopotamia were Ur, Lagash, Babylon, and Nippur. Water was a very important part of Mesopotamian civilization. As the people of these valleys developed irrigation techniques to control the amount of water brought to plants, the populations began to grow and grow more food for themselves. The people had to build canals to bring the water towards the fields, build dikes or walls to stop the water from flooding their crops, and they also had to build reservoirs to store water in case of drought. The increase in the amount of food being produced made it so that everyone didn't have to be a farmer. Some people became craftspeople and made tools and weapons for trade. Merchants bartered with people in Mesopotamia for goods and traded with other cities. And soldiers protected the cities and the food from robbers, as well as protecting merchants when they traveled. There was a hierarchy in Mesopotamia, which is kind of like a power pyramid. The king was at the top of the power structure. He managed the army, construction and irrigation projects, represented God on earth, lived in a palace, and his power was inherited. Next came the elite. These were high priests, army commanders, and merchants. They advised the king. After them were the free people, so these were priests, craftspeople, merchants, soldiers, and civil servants who paid taxes to the king in form of grain. And finally came the slaves, who were prisoners of war and had no rights whatsoever. Now there's one group that we haven't talked about, and they had a really important job. These people were the scribes. Now the scribes were important because they were able to read and write. Now this was important because not everybody in Mesopotamia was able to do this. Cuneiform, which was the style of writing at the time, had over 700 symbols. Now it was used to keep records of bags of grains, animals, and count what was bought and sold. Scribes were also close to the king because they could write official texts. This made them invaluable to Mesopotamian society. The important part of writing is that it allowed the first laws to be written down. The Code of Hammurabi is the oldest known written law code today. The law was designed to create unity, but it did have some problems. Depending on a person's social status, could determine their punishment. For example, for the same crimes, a peasant's punishment would be much worse than someone who was in the elite class. Not really very fair. King Hammurabi of Babylon had these laws written down and expected it to be applied throughout the kingdom. One of the laws in the Code of Hammurabi is if a man knocks out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall also be knocked out. Talk about eye for an eye. Besides laws, other things were written down, such as mathematical texts and epic poems, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the story of the hero Gilgamesh and his quest for immortality. Writing also made life easier in several ways. Without writing, it would have been really hard to organize some of the large building projects, such as the ziggurats, that the people of Mesopotamia made. Now we need to look at Mesopotamian religion. Now theirs was a polytheistic religion, which means they believed in more than one god. And the Mesopotamian religion is the oldest known religion that we know of. They worshipped a whole bunch of gods, and kings were considered the god's representative on earth. Temples were meant to be home for the gods, and religious leaders took care of the temples while the people made offerings in the form of food, drink, perfume, and jewelry. There were also religious feasts to honor the gods. We can see today how Mesopotamia affected our world. Think about how writing changed. Imagine having to remember 700 characters instead of 26 letters. So maybe you guys shouldn't complain too much when I ask you to write a 5-paragraph essay. Today, laws aren't made by gods represented on Earth, but they're made by governments, such as Parliament in Canada and Congress in the United States. And the most important thing is that we have a more literate society. if almost everyone can read, it becomes easier for us to think for ourselves and come to our own decisions on events instead of having to trust someone to tell us the truth. So there you have it, guys. That's the video for Mesopotamia. If you study this stuff, I'm sure you'll do great on your test. And that's it. Take care.